What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the No Fun League. Today, I'm joined by Javon Edmonds. He writes the All 52 Substack. It's very good. You all should definitely subscribe and check that out. And he's a phenomenal follow on Twitter. That's how our interactions have started. So, thank you for being on the show.
No, I appreciate it. Anytime.
Thank you. All right. So, first of all, because I saw this tweet the other day, I responded to it. You were mad that the Lakers had the most primetime games and Dallas, got screwed out of opening night basically after making it to the finals. So do you think this is just like because I feel like this is a constant issue with the NBA and how they schedule games? And teams like the Magic, they don't get any love even though they have a legitimately good team and other teams can probably share the same frustration. So just your thoughts on that. The Lakers have more primetime games than anybody. They were a first round exit last year.
And this is coming from a Lakers fan. The team got put out the last 2 years in the first round. They've only played 9 playoff games in 2 years. That means a sweep and a gentleman's sweep. Why do they have the most games? Like, I get it. The Lakers are an American institution. They're not competing for a championship. Rob Pelinka's their GM. JJ Redick's their head coach. Jeannie Buss is their governor. They're not going anywhere. Yes, LeBron's box office, AD's box office. The Lakers are the Lakers. I get it. But it's supposed to be about growth, right? As a business, you're supposed to be about growth. You're not growing your business showing the same teams every year. I couldn't understand how the Lakers were getting 25 primetime games a year with Jordan Clarkson, Robert Sacre, and Marcelo Huertas back in the day. Why are the Lakers getting all of this and opening night? How does Dallas not get opening night? And somehow they don't get night two either. The Suns and the Clippers, LA's B team. Like, in what sport has LA's B team ever been worth a damn? No sport whatsoever. So how do they get night two on ESPN and the Suns, who have the Matt Ishbia issue over the reigning Western Conference Finals? Why wasn't Dallas and Minnesota the late game for opening night? Why do the Warriors have this many games? Why do the Lakers and the Warriors have more games than the Timberwolves and the Thunder? I'm not the Magic. Why do they have only 8 national TV games? Aren't Paolo Banchero and possibly Jalen Suggs going to be 2 of your feature pieces in the Olympics in 4 years? Why is that team only getting 8 games? I don't understand how Adam Silver operates business. There's rarely anything he does that I agree with, and this right here is absolutely one of them.
All right, really quick, I want to push back on a couple things. One, the Lakers made it to the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago.
They made it to the Western Conference. You're right. They just got whooped by Denver so bad, you get both years
Exactly.
confused.
Exactly.
Exactly my point.
Exactly. No, I agree. I agree. It was awful. Probably I remember. I'm sorry, everything was beeping, but I distinctly remember when the Lakers got swept in 2011 by Dallas. It like legitimately cried because Andrew Bynum and Lamar Odom, they both got kicked out. Like it was just a awful loss. It was the end of the Phil Jackson era. They were trying to three-peat again. It felt eerily similar against Denver 2 years ago. However, that team made it to the Western Conference Finals with relative ease against a good Denver or a good Memphis team and a decent Warriors team because, they still had good pieces. It wasn't as bad as last year what the Warriors had. But I think in every league, like there are certain teams that are just like overshown. And I think that's just a problem that every league has to deal with because those are the teams that I also think that it's not necessarily an Adam Silver thing, like ESPN, TNT, they probably want
And that's a big issue, the television partners.
they
And
probably want the
we
Lakers.
Yeah, and I get that too because we watch college sports. I cover college sports. We know the television partners are a real issue in the landscape these days because there's what probably four different national television days a week in baseball. You're going to see the Yankees on three of them. Like it's an issue. And in the NFL, we get so many primetime games for the Giants, a team that no one wants to see. So no, some of the blame has to go to the television partners. You're absolutely correct. My thing is, as a commissioner, and it's my knock on Rob Manfred. We can get PK Subban on first take, and we can't get any baseball whatsoever. Like as a commissioner, you do have to put your foot down at some point and say, no, 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 no. My league needs these teams showcased. Y'all need to air them.
No, baseball, like, so I moved here from India when I was 5, and I've grown up watching cricket. I didn't watch baseball until my senior year at Temple when the Phillies were good and they made it to the World Series because I paid attention because I wanted to go hang out on Broad Street after they won,
Campus
which
was
was
electric that year. Yeah.
oh, it was phenomenal. I so many times because I lived like 3 blocks down Broad Street from campus. So half of the Phillies games, I'd watch them at Maxie's, and then just like it would be cold and miserable, and if they lost, especially miserable, and I'd just be slightly inebriated, just walking home, and then my building's elevator would be broken, so I had to climb 5 flights of stairs.
Whew.
And I think the worst was when they got shut out by Houston. That was just a miserable,
Yeah.
miserable day. That was a miserable day. And then me and Jonah, who I don't know if y'all are friends or not.
That's my guy. That is
Yeah,
that is one of my better friends that I made at Temple.
he has been at my house, or he was at my apartment for the Philadelphia Union losing their championship, the Phillies losing the World Series, and the Eagles losing the Super Bowl.
Jonah's bad luck.
I don't know. I was in. So I'm a Giants fan. I'll ignore the shot that you took at them earlier for the sole purpose of the second preseason game. I'm not in a position to say anything right
Yeah,
now as a Giants
you
fan.
know, you dislike
Very
Daniel
so.
Jones probably more than I do.
Okay, here's the thing with Daniel Jones. I'm gonna ask you about Lamar in a second, but
Oh,
the Daniel Jones thing. So that football over there, I snuck into the VIP section at Giants training camp his rookie year, and he signed it for me. So like I've legitimately have like a personal like connection. It was like my second time meeting an athlete.
mm-hmm.
So it's like I'm always gonna root for him. At the same time, I also think that if he was in a better situation, he would be a much better quarterback than he is right now because if you get hit that many times and just everything is as miserable as it's been for his entire career, I feel like mentally like a block will be placed. What complicates it is that the people that say, "Oh yeah, he's been mediocre his entire football career," they have a very legitimate point because he didn't really elevate things at Duke. He didn't really elevate things once he's gotten here. But at the same time, I think the $40 million contract thing is a little overblown because there was no other avenue for the Giants that year. Because if you let him walk and he goes to say a San Francisco before like they know for sure that Brock Purdy's that dude or whatever else, and he looks good, then the Giants are getting killed on that end, and Joe Shane and Dable are probably gone just based off that decision.
I don't think so because he's not their guy. So it's like, okay, we're happy he's doing something for someone else, but either way, we wanted our guy, and that's the thing in sports. You want your guy.
That is
Temple just
fair.
got a new president. If Arthur Johnson's gone, and so is Stan Drayton and whoever the hell else the new person would want to bring in, that's their prerogative. New administrations want their guy.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. More so made that point because, as we saw in like Hard Knocks, Giants ownership is very sentimental to a fault. Like
Yeah.
the
Well,
Giants,
are they?
yeah, yeah.
Are they? Is John Mara wrong for wanting to keep Saquon Barkley around?
He's not wrong, but like I don't know how much you like Giants like in depth history you've like followed, but Like the Jason Garrett hire as offensive coordinator was basically forced on by ownership because he coached and played for the Giants back in the day and things of that nature. Like people in the personnel department who had very high roles, um, they have been like relatives of Amara's and stuff like that. Even the Gettleman hire, like they interviewed Lewis Riddick that year,
Yeah.
and they should have hired Lewis Riddick or anybody else really. But since Gettleman was, prior connections and everything like that, he got the job. So the last since Coughlin left, basically, like it's been a lot of nepotism hires for the Giants,
Yeah.
which is why after Joe Shane got the job and then hired his guy and has been doing things his own way since he got there, it's like just like even with like the losing, even after last season, which is miserable, and I think this is like the lowest like enthusiasm that I've ever had for a football season, just based on the Giants going into this year. It's still like there's more hope than like 3 years ago when we almost made the playoffs and the entire NFC East sucked.
Yeah, that was the Heineke year in Washington, right? Yeah.
That was when Heineke almost beat Brady in the wild card round,
Yeah,
and he should
yeah.
have.
I was in the weight room watching that game with my brother, our brother-in-law, and one of his friends. Weird environment to watch a football game. No,
Yeah.
no, I like Daboll. Joe Shane, I thought I was going to be a fan of until watching Hard Knocks, and I'm like, oh, this brother might be in over his head. My thing was with Joe, you don't pay someone to see if they're your guy. You pay them because you know that's your guy. And he explicitly said, we paid him and let Saquon go to see if he's our guy. No, Saquon already showed you he's your guy. And Daniel Jones has shown you he may have flashes of being somewhat decent, but he also has the issue of he will make the worst decision at the wrong time, which is rough as a quarterback, especially when you play in New York City. Well, you play in East Rutherford, New Jersey, but you can look right across the highway and see the
Yeah.
Bronx. So, you know, and also, and this is one of my stigmas. You're a quarterback from a basketball school. I've got very strict rules against that. I can't draft a quarterback from a basketball school, and I can't draft a so-called franchise player from a football school. Like, I would never, if I were an NBA GM, I'd never draft a foundational piece from Alabama. I just wouldn't. And if I'm a football GM, I'm not drafting a quarterback from Duke, Carolina, or Kentucky. It's just not happening.
So if Lamar had gone to Kentucky instead of Louisville, you wouldn't have wanted him.
No, hey, Lamar counts too, because Louisville is, for all intents and purposes, a basketball school. Now, he electrified the country, and he has improving every year. I'll say he's improving. He's improved every year in the NFL. The problem is every season ends the same for him. A tragic, tragic, tragic collapse. You won a state championship in high school. That's cool. In South Florida, where the talent down there is just phenomenal. There's no denying that. College, you got your Heisman, but you never won anything in the ACC. And in the NFL, it just looks like that's how it's going to go. His first playoff game against the Chargers, awful, just awful. Then the next year against Tennessee, absolutely terrible. Then after that was Buffalo, which I don't blame him for, because before that pick six, well, before that pick six, he had Hollywood Brown wide open for a touchdown, and it's exactly who he was looking to throw to. But Ronnie Stanley, who just can't stay healthy for anything, let Jerry Hughes through free, and Lamar couldn't get the pass off. And the next play wound up being the Teron Johnson pick six because Lamar had to hurry up and get the ball out of his hands again. I don't blame him for Buffalo. Then Cincinnati, he's injured, and the whole world knows they would have beat Cincinnati if it were Lamar Jackson instead of sorry ass Tyler Huntley. And then you get last year. Noah, you know how many quarterbacks would love if their defense held Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce to 17 points. And you go out there and stink the joint up. Now, granted, that Kansas City defense was absolutely phenomenal too. Here's my issue with Lamar, and it's less about his performance than this right here. As a quarterback, you are supposed to be a leader of your team. As an offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, you are literally leadership of your offense. And you two made a decision that week to make this a personal vendetta to prove the media wrong that Lamar Jackson can win a playoff game with his arm. When that's just not who Lamar is. Lamar Jackson is who he is because of his combination of arm talent and what he can do with his legs. Something no quarterback has been able to do since Michael Vick. Not Cam Newton, not Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, none of them. And y'all decided we're not going to win our team the football game and bring our fan base to its first Super Bowl in a dozen years. No. We're going to go out here and try to prove a point to the media. And it went awfully for you. And you wasted a historic Ravens defense. And that says a lot. The Ravens have had some special defenses since their inception in 96. Last year's defense, top 3. Like I'm not sure it wasn't the second best. Like there's that Super Bowl year and the 3 years after that, the first Super Bowl I'm referring to. Those defenses, the 2012 team was more gritty than anything. The 2014 team, I still think was better than the 2012 team. But last year's squad on defense was absolutely special. And now the coordinator who's responsible for it is in Seattle. So that's just not leadership quality to me, especially when you've had all these playoff mishaps. That just killed me. He's got a lot to show me this year. Those MVPs, as of right now, they mean nothing. You've got to bring home a Lombardi.
I think, say, I agree, and like you're a Ravens fan, so like you're obviously is a much more impassioned take than I would have. But at the same time, as Zay Flowers doesn't fumble, it's an entirely different ballgame.
And I'm not mad, but you were already in a trailing position at that point too, because you had been playing bad. And your rookie went out there and tried to make a play. Can't get mad at a rookie trying to make a play. And then it was Snead who forced the fumble, right?
Yeah.
Then L'Jarius Sneed makes a play that belongs in the Football Hall of Fame. Like, that's just a great play. We're not going to see that play get made again for another 25 years. I can't get mad at my rookie trying to win a game when an all-pro corner just comes out of nowhere and makes the defensive play of the year.
That's fair. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, like the entire loss is Zay Flowers' fault. But
that changed a lot. Like, that killed all the momentum the Ravens had built up to start tying the game.
My other thing is that, you know, like when LeBron had like his 10 straight finals appearances, whatever conference he was in, like no one else had a shot of going through. And like obviously like the 6 Jordan years. I think it's a very similar thing in the AFC right now with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And I'd say like there's a solid chance that the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL are all in the AFC.
All of them.
And none of them have anything to show for it except Mahomes because he is just better than all of them.
And that's going to be something that gets talked about when everyone retires. And I keep trying to get my guys down here to understand that we also have to accept and stop coming out with our chest all out and we're winning the Super Bowl this year. We got to understand this is Mahomes' world and we're just living in it. And I know for a fact I'll be easier on Lamar once Mahomes' career is done. Because Mahomes has already shown us so much. And he's going to show us even more, believe it or not. So it's like, that's why I've gotten to the point where I don't even have expectations for the Ravens anymore. Like, it's just going to be, when they win the Super Bowl, I'll be overjoyed because it means they got it in a year Mahomes didn't. And that's just, to win a Super Bowl during the Mahomes era is special. Just like you said, if somebody would have won during the Jordan era, amazing. So you can't hold somebody too accountable for having to match up with that type of greatness. It's just last year you had your chance to knock the king off his throne. And in his most vulnerable year. And I kept telling my podcast partner, Sean Bryson, that. And all season we had been saying it. It was the theme of 2023 for the Harbaugh brothers. No year will ever be easier than this season. So they both had to win it. Jim did his job. Granted, might have been shady doing it, but Jim did his job and John didn't, because the Chiefs are never going to be that vulnerable again. At least not for another 3 seasons.
I also push back on that because like the offense was vulnerable,
Yes.
but that is
That's what I
by
mean, the
far
offense.
so, and not even like the entire offense, just the passing game because they had no one to throw the ball to outside of
Yeah,
Rashee Rice and Kelsey. That's the best that they've been running the ball since Jamal Charles was there,
I would agree with that.
and then that's the best defense that Mahomes has ever had in his career.
That may be the best defense the Chiefs have had
Oh
ever.
yeah, yeah. The Chiefs, like a decade ago when Bob Sutton was the defensive coordinator, that defense was letting them down every year,
Yeah.
and now it's just elite. Because
That's the best defense they had since Tom Ali, Dontari Poe, and Eric
Justin
Berry and those
Houston
boys. Yeah.
and Justin Houston.
Justin Houston was on that team. They had a year where they had Marcus Peters and Sean Smith together. Oh, yeah, that team was something. Oof.
They've had good teams for the last decade. Like even before Mahomes got there, they have been consistently good. But then you just add the greatest defensive coordinator besides Belichick in like the last 30 years, I'd say, onto that team.
Ooh, you give Spagnuolo that title. I won't hate on it because he's a product of the 2000 Ravens. So I'll show Spags all the love in the world.
Here's the thing. You beat the greatest offense, like the greatest team of all time. You hold them to what was it, 17 or 13? I forget. Like or
Um,
Super Bowl 42 score. Now you gotta
yeah, they held Brady and those boys because what New York won that 21-17, right?
they won one of them. Oh, they won 17-14. They won
Yeah,
the second
yeah.
one 21-17. So you do that, and then you're the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, and you win what 3 Super Bowls now? With
Three.
Spags as the DC, going on 4. So here's the thing. I usually when like a team is really good or a player is very dominant, like everybody just like naturally hates on them because we're tired of seeing them win. I had that reaction to the Chiefs like 3 years ago. And now at this point, I just want Mahomes to break all of Brady's records and Super Bowls and everything because I don't think Brady's the GOAT, and I'm willing to die on that hill. And Mahomes getting more Super Bowls will make that argument a lot easier for me.
I've gotten to the point, and I think it just has come with age. When a team has been built the right way, I'm at the point where I'm appreciating Kansas City's greatness. I'm not necessarily hating on them. Like Golden State, the only reason I had turned on them was because Kevin Durant. That's it. Every year the Warriors haven't had Kevin Durant, I've had no issue with them. Like, no, they've just Bob Myers did a good job building that team, and Stephen Curry is just I don't even have a word for him. He's just Steph, appreciate it. But like my only gripe with Kansas City is that my team plays in the same conference as them. Same thing with Golden State. My team plays in the same division as them. That's my only gripe. Other than
Yeah,
that, appreciate their greatness.
yeah. No, it's awesome. That's why it was cool for the most part, outside of idiots like Dave Portnoy, that
Ugh.
the entire internet seemed to appreciate this basketball team, and that was really fun. I think that like made it even better than like obviously the experience of LeBron, KD, and Steph on the same team is biblical, but the fact that almost the entire like internet and basketball community was like rooting for them made it even better, and it was sick. Now, about the basketball team. I know that you've tweeted it out. I'm pretty sure I did it at some point too, even though I hate the Celtics. The Jason Tatum thing. Do you think that obviously if they lost any of those games, like it would be an even bigger issue? But do you think that that conversation was overblown?
No, because Steve Kerr has shown us with his Warriors and with Team USA last summer, his rotations are not good. Like, and there has been, and I want to give respect to these guys, since 2014, since Kerr took over, there has been a section of the Warriors fan base on Twitter that claims Steve Kerr is not as good as the rest of the country thinks he is, and they blame his rotations for it. And we never paid them any mind until last summer. And I'm like, and I was working for the Messenger at that time, and I was in charge of watching the FIBA World Cup. FIBA World Cup was coverage was my thing, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, Steve Kerr might not know basketball. I don't know. Stephen Curry might be saving them. And this Olympics was like there were teams that had size and shot making on the perimeter that the U.S. struggled with. And you're not telling me Devin Booker is better suited to deal with that than Jason Tatum. And you know, you'll have people who thought Tatum was over 15 on jump shots throughout this summer. What rhythm was he allowed to get in? He was barely on the floor. What rhythm was he allowed to get into? So I throw that out. They won gold because Stephen Curry just did what Stephen Curry does for 2 games, and LeBron James was phenomenal, and Kevin Durant was phenomenal, and Devin Booker was good offensively as a role player and better defensively than I thought he would be. But Jason Tatum still would have been a better solution, is all I'm saying. Now, if you're going to say Book was more fit for the team than Tatum because he's experienced being a role player before, then cool. Because that's exactly what Devin Booker was at Kentucky. The Devin Booker we saw in these Olympics was an improved version of the Devin Booker we saw at Kentucky. I'm going to sit in the corner, sit on the wing, and I'll be a role player. Jason Tatum has never had to be a role player, so it's a different adaptation for him. That's a better reason. But defensively, which the team struggled with at times, I thought they needed Tatum out there.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with that. I also just think that the downside of all of the online conversation around this is that next time around they don't take like entirely like a star lineup and one role player and like the Derek White role. Like I think that there's a chance that Team USA like tones down the amount of superstars that go so that this isn't a constant conversation.
Yeah, and the glorified role player is an issue in today's basketball world. Granted, Derek White wasn't bad for them at all as an addition. My problem was they didn't need another guard, and you had young guys that you're going to need in 2028 that could have filled that spot. Paolo Banchero could have filled that spot. And that was my main issue with Tatum because we know how the Olympic process works, and we know how somewhat fragile today's basketball player can be mentally. You're going to need Halliburton in 2028. You're going to need Tatum in 2028. You're going to need Booker in 2028. You're going to need Ant in 2028. And you're probably automatically going to give a spot to Bam Adebayo in 2028 because USA Basketball loves him. Those 5 should have got the Kings treatment this summer. Halliburton didn't play. Turns out he was hurt, so he's fine. But Tatum, you're going to need. And now you're going to have to pray that Steve Kerr is not the head coach in 2028. And I'm pretty sure he's going to step down.
Yeah.
Or else Tatum probably doesn't play. Like, you're going to need Paolo in 28. That's why I thought that last spot when they sent Kawhi Leonard home should have gone to him.
That's fair. I definitely don't think Steve Kerr is going to do it again. I think he's
No.
sick of it. Either Spoelstra or Ty Lue would be fun, and if not anybody else that pops up. But I also just think that what people overlooked in the entire discourse was the fact that like Jason Tatum handled it exceptionally well.
Yeah, it was his parents that handled it poorly. He
Oh, he
handled it
was
perfectly.
phenomenal, which is like you just won the finals. I'm not going to get into the Tatum Jalen Brown debate, but you're like one of the best players in the NBA. You just signed the largest contract in NBA history,
You've been the best
and
two-way player at your position for years, and you just won a finals, and you gave up your summer after winning a finals to come play for this team. They should find a way to get you some minutes. It's that simple.
I agree. But then at the same time, I also just think that since they won every game, like it's not like you can criticize what happened. Like obviously you can a little bit because there were struggles, but at the same time, like this summer wasn't about the next generation. It was about Steph, Braun, and KD.
So the thing is that going to cost you down the line? Because you know the expectations here are gold. It's that simple. And you got a dude named Victor Wembanyama who's going to be even better in 4 years. And you just took gold from him on his home floor. In 4 years, he's coming to your home floor. So are you going to regret this summer and not getting your young guys? Because palms have to be greased. That's just how the world goes. Are you going to regret it in 4 years? That's the only question.
I think what they're gonna start do. I feel like they're also just NBA guys are gonna start taking FIBA seriously as well. I think that, and this is why I don't like the Noah Lyles hate, even though the way he handled that Tyreek question the other day was
He's just
insane.
corny. That's what it comes down to with him.
Here's the
It's
thing.
not even a thing of what he believes. It's just how corny he is with his delivery.
Here's the thing. Um, it's the same name. It's another Noah doing well, so that's just good for the name. B, I've also been accused of talking too much my entire life, so like it's I was like, this is like fine. And also, like, I don't think that all of these guys show up if not for what he said and how viral that got and that whole discourse.
I wouldn't say that because the Olympics have always meant something to NBA players since 92. Um, '04 was just, I'll tell you what happened. 92 was dominant. 94 World Cup team was dominant. 96 was dominant. Now, this is where I tell people to pay attention. Go look at the 2000 team and who was on it. That 2000 team gives you a false sense of security of where you rank in the world. Them winning gold that year was the worst thing that could have happened for Team USA in 2004 because that 2000 team like was a product of the world seriously just not being close to the US. Then 4 years later, the world has caught up and you don't think so. And you send that squad out there and we don't crap on Tim Duncan enough for letting 2004 happen. That's why this whole Duncan versus Kobe discourse kills me. You just can't let your team lose to your own teammate Ginobili at that. When 4 years later, Kobe got his boy Power up out of there. But regardless, that old 2000 team gave the U.S. a false sense of security to where 2004 they thought they could take it lightly, and then it's like, okay, we can't just BS anymore. We got to go back to sending our best guys. And that's where Kobe Bryant comes in. Like, all right, if Mike came in 92, I've got to come in 08. And they've taken it seriously ever since. What they don't take serious, and this is from Silver's mouth himself, is the World Cup because they treat that as developmental. And everyone else in the world cares more about the World Cup than we do. So that's fine. Use that for your young guys to see which one of them is going to make the team the next year. I still miss when it was Olympics, 2 years, World Cup, 2 years, Olympics. But if it's the summer before the Olympics now, I guess that gives Team USA more time to do what it wants to do. I think stars are always going to show up. It's just a matter of is it incentivized for them to show up? And the performances, I will say this Team USA will never be as dominant as it once was. And I don't think it's because the world has so-called caught up so much, because I think that's BS too. Team USA no longer has chemistry, and the rest of the world does. The U.S. doesn't go out to Colorado for a training camp every summer anymore. They don't hold tryouts for the team anymore. It's Grant Hill and his boys sit down and think, who do we want on the team? And they call them up. Do you want to play or not? They don't earn it anymore, and they don't practice with each other every year anymore. So that's just going to take off 10 points per game right there.
Mhm.
And we saw that this year. When they go back to that system, we'll see the dominant US again. That and when we go back to caring about the big man in this country. Because oh yeah, that's just I think that's the real reason they might lose in 28. I don't know what 7-footer they're gonna have.
Chat.
Is Chet gonna put on some muscle? Because that's gonna be their only hope. Is Chet Holmgren, and is he going to put on some muscle? And we will be watching Chet these next 4 years in his rivalry with Wembanyama with LA 2028 in mind. Like, all right, Chet, these 4 times a year you play the Spurs is going to be what shows us if we have a big man that can compete with France. Because if not, we're in trouble. You're banking on Chet, you're banking on Walker Kessler, and then you're hoping the high school pipeline develops something.
Yeah, which is it's gonna be interesting. Obviously, like we're still gonna be heavy favorites, but I'm very excited for it already. I'm
Yes.
a huge Olympics nerd. Like I don't like legitimately the first week after the Olympics were over, I was figuring out what to do in life because that was like a massive part of like I was waking up at like 3 in the morning to watch speed walking because it looked fun. And so LA 28 is going to be hilarious. I don't know how they're going to handle the logistical part of that. I'll probably make a video about it at some point in the future, but basketball is going to be front and center, and I'm here for it. It's going to be sad,
Traffic's gonna be
but
killer out there. Oh, I feel
I mean
bad for the tourists who have to experience LA traffic with the Olympics. Oh man.
the mayor came out and said that you're going to be able to get to every event without a car,
Okay.
which is and I don't see a way that that's possible.
It's not. You're
However,
gonna have events at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, at crypto.com in downtown LA, at USC, and at UCLA all the way up in Brentwood.
and at
That
SoFi.
and at SoFi in Inglewood. So hey, listen, good luck. All the major stuff might be walkable, because the Intuit Dome is going to be more utilized than crypto. So from the dome over to SoFi is going to be the closest commute. But outside of that, I don't know if that statement's going to hold up.
I mean, I'm very interested to see. One of my biggest gripes with this country is the lack of public transportation and trains in particular. So I hope that they'll be able to figure out like a train system or whatever.
Yeah,
But I legitimately think, and I don't know how much of a soccer person you are, I'm legitimately scared that the 26 World Cup is going to be a national embarrassment if we don't get our shit together. Because I live about 35 minutes from East Rutherford. The current system to get there is you take a train to Secaucus, which is one stop before New York Penn Station
mm,
or New York Penn Station, and then you got to get a separate Meadowlands line to go from there to what's it called, to the stadium. So there's currently no train system that connects New York Penn Station to the stadium or the rest of New Jersey to the stadium. It's just like one station that can go to the stadium.
the Jersey part is going to be the rough part. If you've got to get from Penn Station to Secaucus and then from Secaucus over, that's not too bad because transfers just are a thing on train and bus lines in the country, especially on the East Coast. I think we have it the best
Oh,
from DC
easily.
to New York. We've got it the
Oh,
best.
DC to Boston accounts for more than 50% of Amtrak's yearly income.
Yeah, like we've
Because
got public transportation down packed in this corridor of the country.
yeah,
Everywhere else, I'm with you. It is just
it's gonna be.
disgusting.
But even like so, the New Jersey Transit is giving everybody a fair holiday all of next week because it's been so bad this summer.
Mm-hmm.
and they're responsible for getting people to the World Cup final in 2 years.
Oof.
And given what we just saw happen in Miami for the Copa America final, which
Was
no one,
embarrassing. Yeah.
oh, it's like just imagine that, but in 15 different stadiums across the country.
Yeah, it's going to be rough, especially since U.S. soccer is already a joke as is. That's just going to compound the crime.
I think I like the hire.
Anything's better than Berhalter.
Oh,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
literally, it's the first video on this channel that popped off. Like it got over 100 views in less than like 8 hours. Because I basically made a video right after that game talking about how Berhalter's an idiot and it was a national embarrassment. And it popped off, obviously, but I say popped off. It got like 400 views and it made me really happy. But in the grand scheme of things, it is what it is. But I it's insane to me how good the women's team is and how trash the men's team is.
Our best athletes don't play soccer.
The thing is,
And I think that's a huge reason. 'Cause they asked the CBS crew, Kate Abdo and Thierry Henry and all of them. And it was some American influencer. Like, do you think if America's best athletes played soccer, they could compete? And they just snuffed them off. And it's easy to do because America's the joke right now. But I'm like, no, that's a serious,
if
serious question. Because our best
if
athletes play football, baseball, and basketball. And you know who runs all three of those. So, and track. And
yeah,
the only country that's ever been able to say a damn thing to us about track are the Jamaicans. And that's it. So them like snubbing that question ticked me off a bit because it's like, no, and swimming
nah,
belongs to us. Like every sport
yeah,
that our best athletes play, we run it. So
yeah,
if our best athletes played soccer, and part of that reason is because soccer is not accessible to everyone, it would be a completely different conversation. If
hmm
you brought soccer to some inner city kids in Baltimore, or to some dudes in South Central Los Angeles, or to them fast ass country dudes in South Florida, where we see Tariq Hill and Lamar Jackson, Deion Sanders coming from, I promise you, American soccer would be a completely different
oh,
story.
Tyreek Hill on a soccer field would be diabolical.
I'm like, I mean, soccer is about footwork and speed. Who's our best combination of footwork and speed play American football? All of
Yeah,
them dudes are in the NFL.
but even like the guys that play college football that don't make it to the NFL, they could go play soccer and be phenomenal at it.
Right.
So I think in the grants, like in a like a big picture view of why men's soccer is so bad, it's just that like soccer itself has been treated like a C tier sport in this country for so long and not been given the respect it deserves. So it makes sense. Like people here grow up making fun of soccer and like,
Yeah.
oh, why do they call it football and like everything like that, which is fine. It's a very American thing to do, but
Granted, the world is right. Soccer should be football, and football should be either soccer or something else by name.
they are
I'm with them on that.
they are. But I would never admit that to my cousins from India.
It's
Never. Even though
a pride thing, huh?
I'm wearing a soccer jersey right now, but I would never. I'm a like it's but no, it's I think it's just that like if more people and I think it's starting to grow now, like people are starting to care about it, which is why like the outrage was so loud on the internet. Like now you have all like the football bros at Barstool and stuff watching soccer too.
Hmm.
So hopefully, I still think like our team is talented. Like the other thing is like I don't know if this many Americans have ever played in like the top five Europe leagues ever
No,
as they
they
are right
haven't.
now. So I think that's pretty sick too. Speaking of college football, because I don't remember if this is on Twitter or your Instagram story. I saw that you were having a successful run as head coach of Temple. Did
Yeah.
not go well.
Yeah, no, I was doing good, and then Clemson's defense just was the best thing I'd ever seen. They held me to 3 for 21 that game. Passing, they held me to 3 for 21. And for anyone listening, because someone's like, "Oh, this dude sucks," the game was still 14-9, and I gotta stop to go ahead and get me one last possession. The problem is NCAA has a roughing the kicker problem right now,
Yeah, yeah.
and we roughed the punter on 4th and 8. And Clemson went ahead and kneeled on the ball, and that was it. We went 3 for 21 passing, and somehow we still only lost by 5 points. I take that as success.
Oh, 100%. Now, so when it came out, I was on vacation. So I came back like 4 days after it came out. And it's Sunday morning. I get off the plane, I come home, let the game download, go shower. And then I literally played, I think I played that game for the vast majority of a week without doing anything else.
Yep.
And my mom and my sister are like, what is wrong with you? And it is probably the most fun that I've ever had playing a video game. And I think I got to like 2038 or 2039 in my temple file. And I got really lucky because in my first recruiting class, there was a 3-star athlete who had like 94 throw power and 93 speed.
Oh man.
So I was just able to,
And you got him to play at the link?
yeah.
Hats
Oh,
off to you.
I mean, he was only a 3-star. So with him, like my first recruiting class was really good. And then I think by the time it ended, I got bored after, 14, 15 years because the team was just so good that I would always recruit the scrambler athletes to play quarterback instead of actual quarterbacks. And I would be able to run around for 20 seconds behind the line of scrimmage and then just like loft it up to somebody. So I started getting bored, but I retired with 6 natties. So, and then I ended up moving Temple to the ACC, and I made the Link the host of the ACC championship game just for fun.
Hey man, listen, I'm gonna say this on behalf of Arthur Johnson. Please don't start those rumors
Nope,
back up with the
nope.
Temple fan base. Oh
Oh,
man, I'll never forget that year. Oh man.
that was a thing.
So no, Temple fans were just screaming when the American added all those Texas schools, all the schools from Conference USA. That Temple fans were just screaming for the ACC to come calling. And it's me, the Carlo, and Jensen, and Kyle Gauss just trying to be the voice of reason. I'm like, folks, if the ACC calls anyone, it'll be Villanova because the ACC is a basketball conference, and Villanova runs the Big Five at the moment. Now that's changing. This was 2 years ago, Temple fans. Please don't kill me because we know what Villanova is under Kyle Neptune and what Temple is becoming under Adam Fisher. The guard is changing. Like hell, if you asked me last year, it belonged to St. Joe's. So please don't kill me, Temple fans. But they were clamoring for the ACC to come calling, and we're like, if the ACC calls, it's going to be for Villanova. They run it right now, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind calling up their FCS team. And then there was screaming for Temple to get back into the Big East and put football as either independent or South. And we're like, okay, this is another one where Villanova's a problem because Villanova's not going to approve adding Temple to the Big East, number one. And number two, Temple's not going to turn down the $6 million a year was making from the Americans TV deal with ESPN to send football independent. So just stop it. But yes, for about absolutely for a semester, almost a full school year, Temple to the ACC was a fan pushed thing.
Jeez. That as someone that lives very close to Rutgers and has seen what's happened to them since they got to the Big Ten, I'm very happy that didn't happen.
Rutgers and Maryland in the Big Ten are two of this country's national disgraces. Maryland should absolutely be in the ACC, and they are the reason for this Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina nonsense right now. Because I wrote on all three of those, and I read the legal documents for all of them, all of the court papers that they filed, and in each one they mention what Maryland did to get out of the ACC and get to the Big Ten. It is because of the Maryland Terrapins that the ACC is going to lose 3 of its institutional schools to the SEC.
What did Maryland do to get out?
Essentially, Maryland made a damn good argument of the ACC's TV deal not being up to par with what every other conference has. and they were able to negotiate a way out of the ACC to where their exit fee was nowhere near what the ACC's initial exit fee was. And they were able to leave to go to the Big Ten, who makes significantly more television money than the ACC does. And now the rest of the three schools are like, hell, if Maryland was able to do it in 2012, we should be able to do it in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that deal's been renegotiated once or twice since 2012. And all three of those schools signed on to ratify it. And that has been Jim Phillips' primary argument. Y'all are complaining about it, but y'all agreed to it in 2016. I think it's 16, 17, and 18. Something new got added to it, or 16, 18, and 19. It's one of those combinations. So that's their hold up right now. But the Maryland Terrapins, essentially, in 2012, are the reason the ACC is going to lose Clemson, Florida State, and North Carolina, possibly before 2027. What a
That's
wonderful
wild.
world.
All right. So speaking about college football and conference realignment and everything like that, you earlier this year went to Capitol Hill for the NIL roundtable that happened, and you were in the same room as Nick Saban, which is really cool. But what would you say is like your take on what happened at that specific event and overall, like where you think the direction of NIL will end up?
So I sat next to Ross Dellinger at that thing, which was like, I'll be honest, this is me outside of work mode, so I can geek out a little bit here. I'm like, wow, I'm in a room with Nick Saban, the Cavender twins, unfortunately Ted Cruz, but he's got name value, so I'll throw him in there. And I'm sitting next to the guy whose job I want. This is actually kind of cool. Let me go ahead and take this in for a minute. But yeah, me and him got to talking, and we're like, yeah, this is just another one of those conversation things that's not going to lead to anything. And I'm sitting here like, I've got a different takeaway. We've got so much going on in this country that needs attention. In NIL in college sports is what the focus is on Capitol Hill. We've got Ted Cruz, who had constituents in the state of Texas freezing over during, what was that, a hurricane that caused a power outage last year, 2 years ago,
I
while
think it
he
was a
left to
blizzard.
go on vacation. The blizzard. It was the blizzard. Freezing with no power while he was on vacation. And his attention right now is on name, image, and likeness. So that was my first takeaway. The second one, I will say Saban and Alabama's athletic director, they made a very good point on employment status that Mike Oresco had said to me months before that happened. All three of them, their argument was, whatever happens with this thing, student athletes need to understand they do not want employee status because all the benefits that they get from institutions right now will become taxable. They do not want to pay taxes on all the benefits that they get from us. And then on the administrative end, schools don't want it because if they've got to do that plus pay a salary to these student athletes, a lot of sports have to get cut. Like after football, basketball, men's basketball, and then at some schools, baseball is the third sport. Some schools, women's basketball is the third sport. There's conversations about what you can keep. Can we keep our soccer teams? Can we keep our tennis teams? Can we keep our track and field teams? And U.S. track does not want that gone because that's where the track, gymnastics, that's where they get their athletes from for Olympics and international competition. Is from the college ranks.
Mm-hmm.
So they got a lot to figure out. I don't think employee status should be the thing. I used to argue this with my grandfather all the time. All the money the NCAA makes off of kids, kids absolutely should make a piece of that. They should absolutely get a percentage of it. I just don't think NIL was ever a thing that was supposed to happen. Revenue sharing was the answer to all of this. And revenue sharing should have been a thing since merchandise sales started pop. Since the Fab Five, revenue sharing should have been a thing. but the NCAA is greedy and they let Congress handle it. And we know when you let politicians handle something, they're going to screw it up. So now they have to sleep in the bed they made. But NIL should have never been a thing. It should have been revenue sharing. And I don't have a problem with NIL for what it should have been. It's what it has become. If kids want to get sponsorships, they should have absolutely always been able to get sponsorships. Now it's these collectives are in, and listen, all the collective is a backdoor way to pay a kid. It's as simple as that. Um, and I'm not going to share half the stuff I know. I just know when Temple lost Aaron McKee, the transfer portal that summer, not even that summer, that spring, was very, very, very eye-opening to me. The name I will throw out there, because I had published the information on it before Jeff Hicks asked for it to get taken down. And I asked Jeff if all of this was okay to print before he asked for it to be taken down, by the way, and he said yes. The name I will throw out was Zach Hicks. Because somehow, some way, before he officially entered the portal, Zach Hicks had been offered $100,000, $60,000, $70,000, and vehicles through collectives. And none of these are through the Tough Fund, by the way. I won't say which schools they were, but Zach Hicks was offered all of that before he even officially entered the portal that Monday.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So, and I've talked about this with a Temple professor, George Deemer.
Okay.
He is an econ guy, but he teaches a classic about the economics of sports gambling. So, cool dude to talk about this stuff. I don't think we've seen it happen yet. I think it'll happen in the next 2 years. If you're a back of the roster guy on a basketball team or football team where you get like 5, 6 snaps a game, but you can still impact the game, what is there to prevent someone from saying, "Hey, why don't you mess up on this play so my bet hits and I'll give you 10 grand through a collective or whatever?"
Okay. Gambling is a thing that the country actually cares about. U.S. integrity and all of those, things that monitor any suspicious activity related to gambling is what will prevent that. Here's what's always been my answer for any question that mentions what about the 12th guy off the bench. Who in the world has ever cared about the 12th dude on the bench? He's probably a walk-on. I know at Temple the 12th dude's a walk-on. Come on, the world has never cared about the 12th dude. We shouldn't start caring about the 12th dude now. The 12th dude might mean something as a senior if he's a freshman right now. Maybe. And it might be at another school. So the 12th man is never anything I'm going to worry about. The 12th man is never going to get in the game to throw the game. Colin Daly got in on senior day. Ryan Sayers gets in on senior day. Connor Gall will get in on senior day. I don't think AK Fielder logged 1 minute while he was at Temple. So the 12th man is never anything to worry about. But collectives have damaged the sport. Because I'll tell you another one. Jeremiah Williams, who left Temple for Iowa State before transferring to Rutgers. That brother knew he was probably done at Temple January of that season. Yeah, those calls came in very early. Yeah, he knew he had a decision to make January of that season. That's what collectives do to you.
Mm-hmm. No, it's basically taking like what happened where like we're putting money in McDonald's bags a decade ago, 2 decades ago. Now it's just like allowed.
Yeah,
it's through an NIL collective. And the funniest thing, and this happened this week, so I'm bringing this up. Who's the guy that coaches Oklahoma State?
Mike Gundy.
Yeah, bro goes on a whole soapbox about NIL is bad and all of this, and then
and I had to tell my kids to tell their agents to stop calling me. And then today we see they got barcodes on their helmet for in-game NIL donations. Yeah, listen, I tell my locker room the same thing. The season has started. negotiating time is over and you got these damn barcodes on your helmet. Tell your agents to stop calling me.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't blame them at all.
also, but why do college kids have agents and want more money to
That
play?
too. That too. Why do college
Because
kids? Granted, they do need somebody to look out for them
oh,
because there's
100%.
always someone trying to take advantage of you, and not every
Oh,
parent
100%.
is well versed in reading a contract. So I'm not too mad at that. The problem is these agents are acting like they're representing NBA players and NFL guys. That's what my issue. My issue is with who the agents are, more so the fact that these kids have agents. You know?
Yeah. Oh, 100. So I was working for a financial services company for about 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I quit because I very early realized that like the only passion that most people have in that field is money,
Yes.
and I do not share that. And I very like I see the connection between being a financial rep, which all of these players also have, and then an agent,
They work
which
hand
is
in
why
hand.
I also think that if you were gonna set up the NIL thing, like it's very obvious that it was done just because the government said that you had to. Like, if you were going to do that, then you should have set up a system where kids don't get taken advantage of. Because another story that people aren't talking about at all, and I know very little about it, so like I want to do a video about it because it's interesting, is a Marvin Harrison situation.
Yeah, with Fanatics and his NFLPA rights. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a entirely different thing, which like he's able to do because he doesn't need like whatever money Fanatics is giving him and all of that because his dad is an NFL Hall of Famer.
Listen, Big Marvin has looked out for Marvin Harrison Jr. his whole life, and Big Marvin has been taken care of in the city of Philadelphia for a long time. My me and my family are from Baltimore, and my dad and his friends know how well taken care of Marvin Harrison Sr. was up in Philly. Like it's very well documented, taken care of in many ways at that, and I'll leave it at that. So with Marvin Jr., like there's not many kids that's going to have the protection that Marvin Jr. has. Um, and that's just another thing with that. And like you said, with government stepping in, we haven't even mentioned the NCAA just lost another lawsuit where they have like a back pay issue where they got to pay a whole bunch of current and student athletes, I mean current and former student athletes, a lump sum of money because of money that's the government essentially said
Yeah,
they've been cheated out of. Again, had you started
it,
revenue sharing, you don't have this problem. Like Boogie
yeah.
Cousins and Chris Webber and Jalen Rose, they've all said it the best. Why can a vendor? Why can I go to the University of Kentucky as their star center and a vendor? I can look at a vendor literally make money off of selling a Kentucky number 15 jersey, but I can't get a free meal. That's wrong. So F the NCAA for life for that.
Oh yeah.
You shouldn't have to. No one should ever have to hear anyone put it any other way than the way Boogie Cousins put it for
I
you to understand it.
personally believe that the NCAA is the most corrupt and hideous organization in this country, which is
Oh,
saying a lot
absolutely.
because some awful companies exist, awful bodies of governance. Shout out the NRA exist,
Yes.
but like, and I like have this constant debate in my head when I think about this at which is more fucked up, the NCAA or FIFA? Because it's a legitimate conversation.
It's very legitimate. I'll say this though. I think with FIFA, the blue bloods of soccer are so dominant, where it's like no matter how even you try to make the playing field for the little guy, they just won't have the money to compete with a PSG, a Real Madrid, and
Oh,
all that.
so FIFA doesn't really handle club soccer.
No, they don't. So here's where I'm going with this though.
Sorry to
And
interrupt.
so like from those leagues, you'll notice all the countries with the best leagues produce the best players. Serie A in France, La Liga in Spain, and then you look at the Premier League, and then you look at the hierarchy of FIFA and the international teams. Where do they? Which countries rule those? The countries that have the
Hmm.
best club teams, right? So it's like the way the power structure works in FIFA. It's like no matter what happens, the top dogs are always going to be the top dogs. But I feel like with the NCAA, who has made it clear they care about football above everything else, the NCAA has sports in a structure where it's like the little guy can still win, but they'll still do all they can to screw the little guy. Like Mike Oresco literally retired as commissioner of the American Athletic Conference because he was fed up with the NCAA. Selection Sunday came around for football. After SMU won the conference championship and they beat Tulane for it this year, right?
I think
Yeah.
I
SMU was beyond a shadow of the doubt to me. If you were going to do a top 25, should have been the highest ranked group of five school. And the NCAA took, I think it was Liberty for the Cotton Bowl or the Fiesta Bowl, whichever New Year's Six Bowl got the group of five team this year. And I texted Mike right afterwards. And long story short, it's like, yeah, I'm sick of this. Me and the ADs are going to have a meeting on Thursday. No, that Wednesday he announced he was retiring. And I saw that alert. I think Dellinger might have reported that. And I'm sitting in my bed at the time. I said, well, damn, Mike, you could have told me that when I talked to you Sunday. I could have had the scoop on this one.
yeah.
but no, yeah, no, the NCAA will do that to you.
I so more so for I think the FIFA conversation is that, oh, like obviously like Spain, Germany, England, like they're going to be good. It's more so with them, which I don't know if the ends like they're different problems. They're both corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like different problems. Where like the FIFA problem comes in is that there's no way that Qatar should have gotten a World Cup nomination ahead of LA or ahead of the US. Same thing with Russia. Same thing with Brazil, really. It's more so like how many bribes that those guys have taken.
Yeah.
And obviously, all of that came to a head because the FBI was like, once again, they screwed over America. So then, wait, we paid attention to what was happening because that was blatant. But it's more so that. And then if you like, I don't know if you watched it, I highly recommend it. There's a documentary about FIFA on Netflix. It is really, really good. And like so many like payments are given for like, oh, for the soccer federation of like this country. And then those players never like no one gets that money because it's just going into other people's
It's
pockets.
pocketed. Yeah. And I
So
think that's where FIFA has an issue more with the NCAA. Because anyone who thinks Greg Sankey and Bob Bowlesby isn't sliding a little something something to the higher ups at the NCAA for, hey, y'all make sure y'all look out for us is out of their minds, right? But yeah, I'm with you on that. I think the pocketing of money in FIFA is where it
it's
becomes a different conversation. Here's my question for you, because
mhm.
obviously you're more well versed in soccer than I am. When it comes to you, Owen Boyle, Sean McMenamin, Max Green, y'all are the soccer guys from the Temple community. Besides the time difference, because we all watched the FIFA World Cup.
Mhm.
We were me, Nick Gangway, Sam O'Neill, Chris Young, Luke Meli, Jake Gable.
Shout out Jake.
I think that's all of us. We were up in Brooklyn for the Empire Classic that year. That was my senior
Mhm.
year at Temple.
Mhm.
And we were all watching the World Cup at some pizza joint in Manhattan. It was like an episode of Friends, really. Good content and all that. Great World Cup, actually. Very exciting games. My
Mhm.
question is, besides the thing we took away from it was the time difference. Besides the time difference, what was so wrong about Qatar getting it over all these other
Okay.
countries?
So first of all, it's the first and only time that the World Cup has been played in December. It's a
Yeah,
June, July. It's a summer thing. They couldn't play it in the summer because it's 130 degrees
it's
in
too
Qatar.
hot. Right. That's the one thing I gathered from it. It's too hot in the summer. for Qatar.
So
Me and Larry Doherty were actually talking about that. We were in his car because I think it was maybe the spring. We were leaving some. Was it the spring? No, it was. It was. We went to Penn for practice. I can't remember if that was the Big Five Classic that year or Temple was playing Penn.
mhm.
Um, but either way, I think it was either right before the World Cup or during the World Cup. And Larry's actually a bigger soccer dude than I thought. And he was mentioning, like, yeah, this being in the winter is weird. And boom, boom, boom. And Owen was telling him, like, yeah, it's just too hot in Qatar to play it in the summer. So now it's in December, which is why Qatar should have never gotten it. Outside of that, I haven't heard a reason for why. So that's what I'm asking.
So okay, bet. So first of all, just putting it in December, like imagine if you put like an international football tournament in the middle of football season. So that's just like so many extra games that it's going to put a toll on your body.
Hmm.
And people saw that injury wise in the rest of the club season. But more so, if you look at countries that get the World Cup outside of Russia and Qatar, it's traditionally been teams that or countries that like have some semblance of soccer history. Like even the United States of America, for as bad as we are in men's soccer, there's soccer history here.
Right.
Same thing with Brazil, South Africa to a lesser extent. There was a lot of shithousery that happened in the South Africa bit as well. Like South Korea and Japan held one, Germany held one, Italy, England, all of these countries. Like they have soccer heritage. It would be like not giving America a football tournament and
Hmm.
like giving it to like a European country. So that's A. B, when you get to the stadiums that are being built, there's a system which I forget what the name of it is called, is where they bring migrants from India, from Bangladesh, and some of these other countries that need a job. They bring them to Qatar, and the people in charge of them take their passports away. And
Oh,
then
wow.
you're working on these stadiums. It's 120 degrees. You're not in the best conditions. People died. A lot of people died building the stadiums in Qatar because they had no existing infrastructure, so they had to build it all up. That's another reason. And then we can get into like the human rights issues that that country has, and things like the German national team wasn't allowed to. Our captain Manuel Neuer. I say our because my mom was born in Germany,
Hmm.
so I that's just the team that I root for in soccer.
In soccer, you'd be able to
So
play for Germany because of that.
technically,
Yeah.
um, but so he had a Manuel Neuer, one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time. His captain's armband was rainbow colored, so they were told that they couldn't, like, he wasn't allowed to wear that.
Yeah, the Middle Eastern countries don't allow any LGBTQ plus
Yeah.
awareness. Yeah.
So then it's like, that issue comes into play as well. So just like from all facets, like because the other two countries, like for Russia and Qatar, England wanted to host the World Cup. Like you're telling me that you're not going to give England the World Cup, and I forget if it was 18 or 22, so I'm not going to make like a statement. But
Hmm.
like you're going to pick those two countries ahead of England, the US, and some of the other bids that were there. Like that's obviously you got paid massive amounts of money under the table. And then the bigger issue that I just have with sports in general is Russia, China, Qatar wanting to host these world sporting events is for the sole purpose that people ignore the other shit that they do.
Yeah.
So sports washing is a very real thing, and that's what these countries want to do is because it uplifts their national profile.
And
In
by
a
giving them
sim
these events, you're enabling it. Yeah.
Exactly. So I took a independent study my last semester at Temple for economics and sports with Dr. Leeds, and I literally wrote a paper about like why hosting like major world sporting events is awful for developing countries. And then with the Olympics coming around this year, I did like a 30-minute video that no one really watched. So it was a shame, but it was still fun to make for me because it was nerd. I enjoyed what I was researching and doing, where literally every country that has hosted the Olympics has seen a recession afterwards. With
Ooh.
China, Brazil. I'm sorry, this is peak nerd content. I'm sorry if I'm yapping too much,
No, this is
but
interesting. Feel free.
so Brazil hosted the World Cup in 2014, where You should go watch the highlights of this because I watch this whenever I'm in a bad mood to make me happy. In the semifinal in Brazil, the Germans beat them 7-1. It was the worst defeat in Brazilian history. And people were burning stuff outside, and like they asked the German fans to stay in the stadium until they got security there for them. So that happens. So obviously, like national morale is going to go down after something like that happens. And then in between that and them hosting the 2016 Olympics, the biggest gas company in Brazil had a major corruption scandal where leaders of that company and leaders in Brazilian government were put in jail for corruption. And then you're hosting the 2016 Olympics. And then you invest billions of dollars in the subway line for the Olympics to connect the Olympic Village with the venues. And that subway line doesn't go to the favelas at all and doesn't help any of the middle and low income people in Brazil or in Rio.
Mm-hmm.
And then 12 out of the 27 venues used at the Olympics were basically unused and gone to ruins a year later. And
Wow.
they spent billions of dollars doing that. Same thing with China. The massive stadium that they built in Beijing for the 2008 Olympics, it cost them $10 million a year to just keep the lights on. That's why they hosted the 2022 Winter Games, is because they just wanted to have a use for like all the stuff that they built 14 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the Olympics are in a major issue right now, where when they awarded 2024 and 2028, it's the first time that they've simultaneously awarded two bids at once, is because that they were afraid that no one would bid to host 28. Because no one is wanting to host the Olympics.
It seems like the solution to that is just don't give the Olympics to a country that just doesn't have the stadiums in place to host it. Like the U.S. is a good one to do. We've got 30 arenas, well, like 28 arenas in every sport. So it's like they've got plenty.
The U.S. is perfectly suited to do it. And what's funny is that in 1984, LA hosted the Olympics, and they basically saved the Olympics because it was this exactly same scenario as it is right now, where no one wanted to host it. Because in the years before 84 in LA, you had the Munich hostage crisis happen in Germany, and wait, let me backtrack a second. I'm sorry. In 72, I believe the Olympics were in Mexico City, and farmers and some students used that opportunity with like the World Eye in Mexico to protest the government, and the government brought out tanks, and 250 people died before the opening ceremony. Like not that day, but in like the week and couple of days before it.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mexican military was everywhere during those Olympics. So in 76 in Munich, because of that, they were like, you know what, we're going to have a very low scale military presence. Like there's going to be no armed security, everything like that. And they literally had someone do a crisis report before the Olympics with like, okay, this is what could potentially go wrong. And one of those scenarios, almost verbatim as to what really happened, is that a Palestinian group goes in and kidnaps the Israeli athletes, which is exactly what happened. And because Germany, especially after World War II, and even more for those Olympics in Munich, wanted to have a low-scale security presence, they absolutely botched the rescue operation, and all of those hostages died. So that, and then right after in Montreal, it took Montreal 40 years to pay off the money that they spent on the Olympics, and everybody involved was put in jail for taking money.
Oof.
So no one wanted to host the Olympics, and LA was like, okay, we'll do it. However, we're not building anything new. The athletes are going to stay in the USC and UCLA dorms. And the two arenas that got built, they got McDonald's and 7-Eleven to pay for them. And it was the first Olympics that was sponsored, and it was one of the first Olympics that made a profit. And then after that, everybody was like, okay, with this new model, we'll want to host the Olympics. And then the bids went up until like now.
Yeah, 'cause even back then, LA had the Forum and all the SC and UCLA's,
Yeah.
arenas.
And then the
and
Coliseum
everything
and
that's
stuff.
down in San Diego if they needed it. Right. Plus the Coliseum, which became the staple of 84.
Even now, like whitewater rafting and softball is going to happen in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
In the 28 Olympics because they don't want to build anything, which is fair. And like the other thing, which I watched a YouTube video about this a couple of days ago, is whenever like a country uses the Olympics as an excuse to like pass laws that normally would not pass, but would pass for the Olympics. So like London in 2012 and France, I believe, passed like facial recognition security laws for the Olympics, which like
Ooh, that's
obviously,
slick.
yeah, like just backdoor that in there. So I mean, like the security for the France games, obviously with everything going on in the world, was insane. Where they had snipers, like no one was allowed inside. Like there were like five different perimeters during the opening ceremony because it covered such a large area. But no, world events are very world sporting events are an interesting rabbit hole to go down.
No, hey, listen, you educated me on some stuff today.
Yeah, no
So
problem. No problem. I have one last question for you before I let you go, and that is, what are your like? Who do you? I don't want to ask who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl because that's a very basic, generic question. Well, I will ask though is what are your like? What are some of your predictions or thoughts on the NFL season?
um and then let's go pull this up for you. 'Cause every year I go through every game and pick who's going to win, um, and
Same.
determine my Super Bowl winner off of that. Uh, so let me find that for you. And
Which do you use the playoff predictors website?
no, I don't. Like I literally have a Google spreadsheet of every game, and then I will go through the tiebreakers myself for each team's record, um,
That's awesome.
to seed the playoffs and go from there. Uh, so with that being the case, I've got some storylines to the season. Uh, this is going to be Josh Allen's worst season since his rookie year. He's going to be tested, and I don't think Buffalo makes the playoff. I think Miami, who just got exposed last season for how soft they are physically and mentally, and the Tua Tagovailoa stuff from yesterday doesn't necessarily help, regardless of whose side you're on in the situation. It just doesn't necessarily help. I don't see Miami making the playoffs this season. Um, like Aaron Rodgers has to stay healthy because the same thing I said about the Ravens for the AFC as a whole last season, that's the Jets for the AFC East this season. It's just not going to be easier than it is this year to win that division. Uh, I'm big on Tennessee this year, very big on Tennessee this year. Will Levis has shown, and you know what? The thing with Tennessee is it can either be very good or it can be right in the middle with them for this reason only. Will Levis' success came last year because he kept life simple and made it easy for himself by just making sure his first read every play was his best receiver, which I think every young quarterback should do. Your first read should be to your best guy. Make life easy for you. And if you can get it to him, just get it to him. And it made Tennessee look better than they should have been at the end of last season. And you add Calvin Ridley to that. So it should get even better. The only question is, was that Will Levis' thinking? Or was that the last coaching staff who's no longer there? It's a whole new coaching staff this year. Was it the previous coaching staff's coaching of him? Like, was it them telling him, hey, your first read every play is DeAndre. And if you can get it to him, let him go be DeAndre Hopkins. Because if it was just the coaching staff's thing, now it's, is he going to be smart enough to carry that over? Or is it going to be, I've got to prove I don't have to be that type of quarterback? So Tennessee's very intriguing to me for that reason. Uh, and then lastly, to be honest, it's the Eagles. Once again, you have the best roster 1 through 53 in the National Football League. There's no excuse for you not to at least be in the NFL. They've had the best roster for the past 3 seasons in my eyes. There is no reason for a collapse like last year to happen again, personnel wise. But then I look at the coaching staff. I'm not a fan of Kellen Moore, not a fan of Vic Fangio. I think there are two jobs that can come open this season that clear the way for Belichick to get his return for him to pursue Shula's record. I think Philly has a strong potential to become open, and I think Buffalo has strong potential to become open. And I think Miami has strong potential to open up because if they just show they're soft like that again this year and miss the playoffs like I think they will do, there has to be questions like is Mike McDaniels a head coach or is he just a very good offensive coordinator?
All right, so for Miami, I think once again, like if they played another team that wasn't the Chiefs, maybe they do something in the playoffs, maybe they win a game. At the same time, I agree with you that it's like a speed based team.
Yeah, like you've got to remember before the KC game, all the games that led up to it, they had Tennessee on Monday Night Football, and they
They
get
lost.
that exact matchup again this year. They lost that game, and it sent their season spiraling.
Yeah.
Then
And
they
then
came down here, well, up here, excuse me, to M&T. And I was at that game with my dad and my little brother. They got smacked around. It was Tua looked as scared as I've ever seen him look. It was so bad that Patrick Queen got in that press conference and talked real crazy about not only the Dolphins, but the team that their system comes from that the Ravens just so happened to play next week, the 49ers. He
and then
said
they
all these teams these days, they want to do all this run around and finesse and speed stuff. At some point, y'all have to realize you're going to have to buckle up and play some real man's football and get hit. And then the next week, well, 2 weeks after, excuse me, they play Buffalo Sunday Night Football for the division. Get outmanned again. Then the week after, totally physically dominated by Kansas City. So there's just, what was that? A 6-week stretch of time, 7-week stretch of time from the end of last season where teams can just look at that tape and say, this are who the Dolphins are. We can break them.
yeah. Uh for the Eagles, I obviously hate them. I They are the bane of my existence. And
Their fans
somehow,
make it easy to hate.
here's the thing. So I became like I said, I like didn't really pay attention to baseball until I got to Temple. So I kind of just started rooting for the Phillies because I could go to games for like $5. So it was like, why not? But I love Philly sports fans. I legitimately think that they're
They're
the best
passionate.
fans.
They are
They are
very passionate.
they
It's
are
just they've got a tendency to be super wrong many
oh
times because of that
oh
passion. And it's
Jonah
just
Jonah
fun to let them know about it, especially the
jo,
Sixers diehards. I had so much fun with them up at Temple. My freshman year, I took David Mendich's mandatory journalism class where he charged us $85 for that damn textbook he wrote and wanted us to think none of the proceeds were going towards his pocket. Yeah, right, Mendich. You can save it. You save it for somebody who's buying it, because I'm not. Anyways, I was in that class telling some random kid the Sixers need to trade Ben Simmons because you're never going to win with him and Embiid on the same time. And I on the same team. I got called so many different types of crazy for that one. And then the next year, we had turns, the radio networking summit. And Alexa Ross, who's at CBS 3 in Indy, um, Ty Johnson, who's at 97.5 The Fanatic, and I'm trying to remember who else it was. It might have been Zach Berman. I could be wrong. I'm sitting here asking them because this is something you gotta. If you're working in radio in Philly and you're from out of town, it's not a bad question to ask. I'm like, when you're from out of town and you can very clearly see something that the market you work in just can't see because they got just the hometown bias clouding their vision. How do you get that point across without hating? And I said, for instance, mine is I very vehemently believe Philly will never win anything with Simmons and Embiid on the same team because it just does not work basketball wise. And instead of me getting a professional answer, Alexa Ross she joined my hate wagon that day. And Ty Johnson, I will never have a conversation with that dude again for this. This is on the spot in a Zoom lobby. This is a serious question from a young dude in radio. And this is another black dude too. So I'm like, be a mentor at this point. He goes, instead of giving a real answer, well, when have the Wizards ever won anything? I'm not a Wizards fan. And what that got to do with the question? And sure enough, the year later, the next year, Ben Simmons got traded from Philly. He had that terrible series against Atlanta and got traded from Philly. I said that dude will be on my shit list for the rest of my life. And every time I see him, the next time I see him, I'm going to remind him about it and laugh in his face. I was going to tweet him out that day. And my good friend Sam Cohn, who now works at the Baltimore Sun, and Ray Dunn, who's at 97.5, they said, Javon, as your big brothers in this industry, for the sake of your career, although you are absolutely 100% right, and we know you're just having your fun with it, don't tweet him out, because for some reason, somebody will hold that against you. And I've been holding on to that for so long. But when I see Tyrone Johnson, I want him to know he's getting a big fat I told you so. And I actually have not agreed with an opinion of his that I've seen ever since. I don't see much because I don't watch local Philly television or listen to local Philly radio. I read the paper because I'm an Inquirer alum. He's getting the biggest I told you so I've ever delivered in my life for that. But it's stuff like that where I'm like, it's so easy to get Philly fans because they will let their fandom blind them so much. It's just easy to
Yes.
get them.
It's so much fun, especially with like Saquon going and everything else that they did. I'll just drop to Joe and I'm like, oh, this is looking like a real dream team this year. That gets them going too. It's really fun when you bring up the dream team. But no, so I had my fantasy draft on Saturday, and I wanted to stack because 2019 Lamar's first MVP year by mid-season because of a couple of trades. I had Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, and Marquise Brown on my fantasy team. So literally every time that the Ravens offense scored, outside of Justice Hill getting a touchdown,
Or Mark
I
Andrews.
I mean Mark Andrews gets a passing touchdown, Lamar threw it.
Even
I still
Lamar
get
gets the
points.
points. You're right. Yeah. So
So
anytime anybody not named Gus Edwards or Justice Hill got a touchdown, you got points for it. Because
exactly, and
Willie
it was
Snead wasn't
awesome.
scoring.
Yeah, it was incredible. And I've always wanted to like have a stack again. So this year I was like determined, especially because I ended up with the 10th pick. So I was like Jonathan Taylor in round one, and then round two, round three, I can probably go Pittman, Anthony Richardson, and we have a good stack. Jonathan Taylor went pick 9, so I'm at pick 10, and the two guys sitting in front of me are AJ Brown and Saquon Barkley. And I'm like, I want a stack, and also in good conscience, I don't think I can pass up on those two dudes. So my fantasy team right now has Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and Saquon Barkley on it.
All you're missing is Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert.
I mean, Jalen Hurts throws it to them. We're still good.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame because I'm going to have to root for them to do well offensively now. But I don't think that they have the best roster in the NFL.
Who would you say does?
I legitimately think that Detroit has the best roster in the NFL right now.
I think them losing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to go back to Philly killed that. Because I
But
look at Philly and I'm like, quarterback, fan of. Running back, Saquon, one of the best in the league. Kenny Gainwell, very good backup. O-line, can't find any flaws in it. Maybe at right guard this year with Jurgens moving back to center. Maybe at right guard. D-line, all the fresh bodies you can imagine. Linebacker, potential. Secondary, after this draft and this offseason, can't find any holes in it. Tight end, Dallas Goedert. Wide receivers, check. So, like and then with Philly, it's like their backups are able to come in and fill in for however long you need them to. That's why they get 1 through 53. I give them the best roster. When I look at Detroit, I'm like, when's the old Jared Goff going to show up? Becomes number one. And then the secondary, I'm like, they've got to show me they did improve this year. Yeah, because they
do.
losing Johnson, I'm like, yeah, you got to show me. Because they drafted, who was it? Was it Terry Arnold they drafted this year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's going to be good on the outside. There's still a question mark at safety and in the slot.
So what I think that they should do is they drafted Terry Arnold, they drafted Ennis Rakestraw. Now, I've seen Terry Arnold play. He was the only one in joint practices that could stop Malik Neighbors once, so I'll give him that.
Mm-hmm.
And Ish Rakestraw, I haven't seen him play yet. I want to watch their third preseason game to see if he plays. I also think one of the most underrated and least talked about moves of the offseason is the fact that they got Carlton Davis from Tampa. Now, they did give up a
You
third to
like
get
Carlton
him.
Davis?
I like Carlton Davis. I think he's been a
Ooh.
decent corner his entire career. And I think I think he's much better than the corners that they had last year. And if Rakestraw can play in the slot, then you can move Brian Branch into the CJGJ role.
So I think that's where we differ. I'm not big on that Tampa Super Bowl secondary. I think Winfield saved them a lot. Bunting and Carlton Davis, they hold their asses off, and they can be beat very easily. And that got exposed when that offense wasn't super high power anymore, and Leonard Fournette
I
wasn't killing clock. So that's my thing with Carlton Davis. Is he that guy? Now, Ennis Rakestraw, I've got hope for because he tested pretty decently, and Dante Collinelli sees potential in him. I don't disagree with Dante Collinelli in much when it comes to football. That dude's a nerd. Him, Caden Steele, and Ramir Vaughn, if they say something about football, I'll shut up and listen. I watched Caden and Ramir. We had them host our WHIP draft show, and me and Caden senior year. I watched them from January all the way up until the draft. Stay up till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning watching film and having detailed notes on literally everyone who was selected in that year's draft and a few of the undrafted free agents. So I shut up. And with Rakestraw, he had the privilege of lining up across from Luther Burden every day in practice. That is a huge advantage that not many DBs in this draft class have. So Detroit secondary, with how gritty their coaching staff is, has a chance to beat something. But it's just they've got to prove it to me first.
I also think that Detroit's linebackers, Anzalone and Jack Campbell, are a lot better than Philly because Devin White is another, major benefactor of the Super Bowl eyes on the Tampa Bay team in 2020.
And he played
And
next to Levante David.
exactly.
Yeah, Devin
And
White's kind of
then
got that syndrome of what I had for every Ravens middle linebacker that played next to Ray Lewis. I'm like, it ain't that hard to
which is
play next
fair.
to Ray. Now, Bart Scott was different. Bart Scott, I left out of that conversation. Everyone else, I'm like, hey, man, playing next to Ray ain't that hard.
Yeah.
And CJ Mosley was another one for me because Daryl Smith was the best linebacker on that team that year. Daryl Smith deserved the All-Star, deserved to be a Pro Bowler when he left Tampa to come to Baltimore. And I'm like, it's very easy for CJ, who's that athletic, to play next to him. And when Daryl Smith left, CJ Mosley got exposed in Baltimore. I don't know what the Jets have done to make life easy on him, but down here, once Daryl Smith left, it got bad. So I'm absolutely with you on the Devin White thing.
And then with Nakobe Dean, I think he can be a good NFL player. He's just never healthy.
Never available.
So, and like that's just a roster. When it gets to coaching, Dan Campbell is probably easily like a top 3 NFL coach right now.
Ooh. Ooh.
Easily.
Ooh. Shanahan, Reed.
I genuinely am considering saying that Dan Campbell is better than Kyle Shanahan when
Oh,
it comes
wow.
to being a head coach.
Ooh.
Because how do you not in the Super Bowl? How do you not know the overtime rules, and how do you mess that up so badly?
Now I'm with you on that. Shanahan has those. He's got 3 Super Bowl mishaps under his belt. I'll
He
give
has
you
blown
that.
3 10-point leads in the Super Bowl, 2 as a head coach.
That's rough. You're absolutely right, but it's still
Now, Dan Campbell
Campbell's got to get
technically
to the 3.
he does. But I'm just talking about like what you want a head coach to do to be kind of like the CEO of the entire operation. I think, and I love Kyle Shanahan. I have nothing against him whatsoever. I think he is one of the greatest offensive minds that we've ever had in the NFL, him and his dad. However, Dan Campbell as a head coach is much better. And the overseer responsibilities.
Mm.
And some of that is because he's not calling plays for anything, so he can do that in a much easier way. But at the same time, I also just think that we just talked about it with Miami, San Francisco, LA, like the guys that run the Shanahan system, they get caught out when it gets to hard nosed punch you in the mouth football.
So I've got
And
two things. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
which is what the Lions are good at. Like you talked about the old Jared Goff showing up. Jared Goff with this roster is not going to be in a position where he needs to carry the team.
Nope.
He just needs to be a good play action quarterback, which he can do with his eyes closed. I also think that the Jared Goff vibes train with after that contract and who he married is at an all time high.
Hey, but that's cause for you to fall off, though. You lose your hunger after that. You got paid and you
But
got
this
the
is the second
girl.
time getting paid.
Yeah, but this is a different type of money.
True,
And
but
he's
like
got the girl this time. So it's like,
true.
where's the hunger at? You ain't got much more to work for.
At the same time, there's a lot less you can do with your money that's stupid in Detroit than in LA.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
if you're married, then you're not out
You
on the
really ain't
town.
leaving the house. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just hanging out.
So I'll add two things to that. McVay
Mm-hmm.
also has to be in that conversation.
Oh, of course. I
Sean
love Sean
Payton's
McVay.
back in the NFL as a head coach, and Jim Harbaugh is back as a head coach.
Okay. So
And
it's
Doug
Sean
P.
Payton.
I like Doug P too. I'm a big Doug Peterson fan who has a Super Bowl under his belt.
He does. I'm not talking about like overall body of work. I'm talking about like going into
Just going into
this
this
year.
season, who are you a fan of? Is what you're saying. I can
Yes.
respect it.
And I think it's Andy, Dan Campbell, and no, I'd say Andy, Sean McVay, and Dan Campbell in that order.
Mm.
The Harbaughs and Shanahan are easily in like the top 7.
So you said the Harbaughs. There's a reason I mentioned Jim, and it's for that other point I was about to mention with Dan Campbell, because you mentioned something, and it's my gripe with John Harbaugh, and I truly believe it. You said Campbell doesn't call plays. It's different though because he can call plays. He's a former tight end, worked under Sean Payton all those years in New Orleans. So I know he's got the capability if he wanted to take over. John Harbaugh, I strongly believe he babysat that 2012 Super Bowl team. A lot of leaders on that team did not like him, and the team hasn't been jacked since until Lamar came along. People seem to brush this under the rug and forget it. And I think I've heard one analyst say this. It might have been Ryan Clark. Lamar's rookie season, before he checked in for Flacco, the report had already came out. The Ravens and Harbaugh agreed to mutually part ways at the end of the season. He had been that bad.
Shit.
Lamar saved John Harbaugh's job. And in today's NFL, I look at every team that has won a conference championship in this era of football. All of their head coaches have experience as an offensive or defensive coordinator and either call plays from one side of the ball or damn well could if they pleased. John Harbaugh is a special teams coordinator from the Philadelphia Eagles, and he couldn't take over play calling on either side of the ball if Jack and Jill's life were dependent on it. And I
I
think that is why the Ravens may never win a Super Bowl with him as head coach, because he cannot take over play calling. And if I'm a coordinator working for him, why do I have to listen to you? You don't know what you're talking about. I'm way more qualified to do this job than you are. Matter of fact, in today's NFL, I deserve your job more than you. So I'm
okay.
not a big John Harbaugh fan. I think today's NFL, your head coach has to be able to take over play calling on one side of the football, and I don't mean special teams. And I think we do a little too much of hanging on for what you did in the past. What have you done for me lately? And that's why I'm very strongly believe he and Mike Tomlin should have been gone from their respective clubs 3-4 years ago, because they just
I
don't
was
have it anymore. Now, I'm
gonna
not saying they can't coach anywhere else. It's just at some point, hell, Pat Riley won 5 championships for the Lakers, and they got tired of his voice. All of them said it on the documentary. Sometimes your message gets old, and your ship just has sailed in that city. I think it's time for both of them for both franchises to just move on from those two. Not saying they can't coach anywhere else, but I think their time has passed in Baltimore and Pittsburgh, respectively.
Okay. I was just gonna bring up Mike Tomlin because I think both of those franchises are interconnected because of the rivalry, and
And
I
they
think
run
both of
themselves the same way. They
yeah,
run their organizations the same exact
they're
way.
very similar,
Them two in
and
New England.
yeah, and I put like the Steelers and the Giants are always connected because like their families are literally related to each other. Like John Mara's granddaughter is literally named Rooney Mara after Art Rooney. So like those franchises are very similar in the way that they do things. It's very old fashioned. But you're right, Baltimore, New England, similar as well. I think, and once again, it could be a similar situation to what we just saw with Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll, both of whom can still coach. Their message just got old and the results
Yeah.
weren't there. I think what people forget, because you brought up Sean Payton earlier, the Saints went like 7-9 3 straight years in a row until the Marshawn Lattimore and Alvin Kamara draft class saved their ass,
Yeah.
which is one of the best draft classes in NFL history.
And Sean Payton's a dude who I tend not to give too much praise for because him and Pete Carroll, I look at them and the rosters they had with their squads. One Super Bowl each is a letdown. I don't know how we say that about Mike McCarthy in Green Bay,
And not
and
those
we
two.
let those two fly off the hook so much.
It's because, and I think this just applies to people in life. Some people are good at just explaining their case and talking, and some people aren't good at talking. And the people that are good at talking, which Sean Payton, Mike Tomlin, Pete Carroll, they're much better at talking in press conferences than Mike McCarthy is.
Yeah,
And that just puts you at a different
and it'll fool
stratosphere
the
of
media, and people tend to
exactly.
forget the we have serious power. Like if John Harbaugh knew how I felt about him, he'd make sure I never worked for the Baltimore Sun. The reason he still has a job is because Mike Preston's the only person in this town in media who will ever utter a bad word about him. If reporters in this city started saying the things I say about John Harbaugh, he'd probably be fired. Like
Yeah,
a lot of franchises don't feel pressure to make moves in any personnel until either the fan base or the media in that city start saying it because it doesn't get national attention until one of those two demographics start saying something. Because national media does not start speaking about anything until local media says it, and then the national media picks it up and runs with it. That's
yeah,
just how it goes. And there's no national cry for, hey, it's time for John Harbaugh to go because no one in Baltimore that covers the team will see it themselves. The only person in national media, there's only two people in national media, three actually, that would ever be possible of like actually realizing he's the problem. Shannon Sharp, Ryan Clark, and Rex Ryan. Two former Ravens and a Steeler.
yeah,
That's it. And maybe not even Shannon Sharp because he doesn't give a damn about the Ravens. He's got sour grape towards us. I mean, he's got sour grapes towards the Ravens because they cut him in 2002, and he knew what the deal was. The team wasn't a Super Bowl contender anymore. He was old, and they needed to save money. Why he still got sour grapes over it, I don't understand. You got your Super Bowl, the city loved you for it, and then you ruined it by how much crap you talked about this because you talked about them on your way out. No one hates Rod Woodson for leaving. No one would have hated Shannon Sharp for leaving, and he just kept his mouth shut. You knew what the deal was. You knew you weren't going to be here long anyway. I just don't understand his problem.
yeah. All right. Last question then to end it. Say Harbaugh gets fired this year. Who do you want to be the head coach?
I want. Ah, man. He's in Seattle now. He just got the job. And Mike
Okay,
McDonald.
so
Yeah, I like.
that's
If you got to trade something to Seattle to get him to bring him back home, do it. Do it. That would be my dream world. If you got to pull because Denver had to give New Orleans draft picks for Sean Payton.
yeah.
If you
They
got to do that, do it.
here's the thing with Harbaugh. and this is something that Tomlin doesn't really have, is John Harbaugh might be one of the best like hires of coordinators in the league, maybe the best, because everybody he hires ends up getting a job.
Oh, flag on that play.
Go ahead.
Oh, he can hire a defensive staff. John Harbaugh absolutely can hire a defensive staff. Offensively, he purposely hires bad candidates so they won't take his job. He got there. He kept Cam Cameron along way too long before he finally was pretty much forced to bring in Jim Caldwell. And Jim Caldwell left for Detroit, and he replaced Caldwell.
Tressman?
I'm trying to think, was Trestman before Kubiak? Yeah, Trestman was before Kubiak. He got forced to fire Mark Trestman, brought in Gary Kubiak, who I would have loved to have replaced John Harbaugh after 2014. I don't think people want to. I am very big on that Gary Kubiak team. I thought that was Flacco's best year. Justin Forsett had the best year of his career. If not for that damn Julian Edelman, the Ravens are Super Bowl champions that season. I
Yeah.
thought that team was the best team the Ravens had. I thought that team was better than the 2012 Super Bowl team. Um,
Really?
he had Kubiak, and when Kubiak leaves to go home to Denver, Harbaugh doesn't keep anyone from his system. No one. When this was the best football Joe Flacco ever played in his career. And since Joe Flacco has shown that's his favorite system to play in, Cleveland last year played great. Signed with the Jets because they somewhat ran that style of offense. Like, that's what Flacco is comfortable with. The Ravens could have had Kyle Shanahan as their offensive coordinator before Atlanta, and Harbaugh turned it down. And the Ravens got stuck with Marty stinking Morningweg, and then Greg Roman,
All right.
and now Todd
So
Monken. He can
I
hire a
forgot
defensive staff, but
I
offensively he
forgot
can't.
I forgot about the Mark Trestman years. That's my bad. Shout out Kim Cameron for somehow getting a job occasionally in the NFL. However, Greg Roman with mobile quarterbacks has a good track record.
It flakes out though. It burns out.
It
It burns
does. It
out
does.
with Kaepernick. Naturally, it didn't get a chance to burn out with Kaepernick because the 49ers ownership had whatever reason they had with Harbaugh, and he went back to Michigan. It would have flaked out with Kaepernick.
It
Maybe.
does.
But it
But
flaked out with Lamar terribly.
it did. It did. I agree. But at the same time, I think that that was very beneficial for his development. As you said, he got better every year. And
I don't
then,
My disagreement with that is I thought it was important for Lamar his first 4 years to really be taught how to become a passer. And I don't think Roman did that. They handed the ball off
that is
so
true.
much. There was no room for Lamar to go out there and improve. Like that it working so much Lamar's first and second years was a detriment because it kept him from getting better the way he needed to. Like the Ravens didn't need to compete his first 2 or 3 years. They didn't. They just needed him to get better and to be a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't need to be a contender, but it worked so well that they tricked themselves into thinking they needed to be a contender, and they got stale.
That's fair. That's fair. I was definitely wrong in that coordinator argument. But I don't know. It might just be vibes because, like, I'm not in the Baltimore media market and I'm not a fan of the team. But I don't know. I feel like there's never any like side storylines and stuff in Baltimore for the
Oh
most
no, it's a
part.
very cleanly run organization. Yeah,
It's a very well run, and I feel like a lot of that is like on the and like the team. Like I haven't seen that team give up.
they've gotten soft. They used to be a
That
punch
might
you
be
in the mouth team.
they did. They did.
They were
I
soft.
think
They were soft until McDonald got to town.
I was gonna say last year, Roquan Smith, Kyle
Yeah.
Hamilton. Oh, this is my. I promise this is the last thing because like I told my friend that I'd be at his house at 7:30, but this is fun. Um, I will die on this hill as well. the biggest issue for the Philadelphia Eagles is the fact that they drafted Jordan Davis instead of Kyle Hamilton.
They needed Kyle more. They needed him more.
And
Absolutely.
I 100% thought that they were going to get Kyle Hamilton. I started yelling at the TV as soon as the pick before them got announced because I was mad. And then they didn't take him, and y'all got him. And I was really happy because he is such a good football player.
He's great. And I'll let you in on a secret that nobody outside of that WHIP studio knows. I was livid when they drafted Kyle Hamilton. Because they already had three safeties. They had Chucky Clark, they had Deshaun Elliott, and I think Averett. And Clark and Elliott had just had good seasons. Elliott's still doing his thing down in Miami. And Chucky Clark, his only problem was he couldn't catch. He could get to the football better than any safety in the NFL. He just couldn't catch. If he had hands, Chucky Clark would have been first team All Pro. And they sat there and drafted Hamilton, moved both of them, and spent money on Marcus Williams. And I was so heated because I'm like, this team very clearly needs help at receiver. And those draft picks and the money that was spent on bringing Marcus Williams in could have gone towards receiver. Now, 3-4 years later, here I am, and Kyle Hamilton's my favorite player on the team. So you know what? Hey, listen.
Hey, it happens. It happens.
It happens.
2019 Ravens on Madden. Chuck Clark was my user in on defense every time because he was so good.
He knew how to
Especially
find the ball.
yeah, especially because Madden hadn't nerfed the change of direction yet, so you could just like pretend that you're blitzing with a safety and just sprint all the way back and make every play imaginable. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But Isaiah Simmons was a god for that. Thank you for your service, Isaiah.
I hope
Hopefully
his
you can
career works out. That I really do.
last year, it's probably like 7, 8 a.m. and I'm laying in bed and I see that the Giants trade for Isaiah Simmons for a 7th round pick.
Steal.
I start screaming. I wanted him at pick 4 instead of Andrew Thomas. Now, and once again, in hindsight,
he should have been a Giant. Yeah, everyone had him mocked to the Giants.
They did, but Andrew Thomas is a dog, so we're very happy with that. But nah, he's such a good player. I think this defense will be better for him than Lynx was.
Yeah, Arizona just doesn't know what to do.
Oh, they don't know how to use linebackers.
They don't know what to do with Zayvon Collins. They didn't know what to do with Isaiah Simmons. They didn't know what to do with Hassan Reddick. Now, Arizona's just a bad spot for linebackers.
No, it's awful. Hassan Reddick, what another situation that is that the Jets are doing. The Jets are the Jets.
You knew he wanted a contract. You knew it.
Yeah. Also you knew that he wanted a contract, and he's not, it's not like Judon who's gotten paid a couple of times and is like, okay, Atlanta doesn't know me. Obviously, I have to show up, and I'm coming off an injury. Like Hassan Reddick had a decent year last year. Obviously, he's going to want his money.
And you know what? For Judon to not want his money, it makes me mad at Eric DeCosta. You could have brought Judon home because they need an edge rusher badly. You're relying on David Ojabo this year.
That is true.
Ojabo and Owe, which has not turned out. Owe hasn't panned out, and Ojabo has to prove he can be healthy.
Yeah, I did a video where I tier ranked the NFL teams, and I don't think that I put the Ravens in the Super Bowl contender category.
They're not this year.
Just because I feel like they lost too much on the offensive line, and they lost a little bit on defense as well.
Yeah,
and somehow still,
losing Clowney and that old line, they wasted their golden opportunity last season.
In spite of all the first round picks that they've used on receiver, they still only have one good one.
Bateman's got to prove he can stay healthy, but even then, Lamar has to get him the ball because Bateman gets open and Lamar looks him off viciously. Lamar's got to get him the ball, but he's got to stay on the field, and you've got to hope Tez Walker pans out.
I think he will. I really like him.
Yeah, I like Tez.
Yeah, that's a solid Baltimore Ravens late round draft pick.
Yeah.
But hey, man, thank you so much for hopping on. Hopefully we can do this again as the season goes on. And obviously basketball season and all of the college sports, because I know that's your main domain. This was really fun.
Oh, no, absolutely. We'll definitely make this happen again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right. Thank you guys for watching. This is another episode of the No Fun League. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.